Hi, welcome to the show. Others receiving votes. I'm Pat Forde with Sports Illustrated, joined as always by Gene Wojciechowski and Bryan Fischer. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about the monster doubleheader in the SEC, games in Tuscaloosa and Athens that Bryan and I will be covering. We'll ask whether Chapel Bill is making a comeback. How big the playoff should be going forward. We'll apply the eye test to some playoff contenders. Give a first glance to the Heisman. Make some game picks, and Gino's got some explaining to do there. And
I do.
Yeah. And a chicken argument gone wrong. So all of that. Although real quick first before we dive into the main topics, I do have to tip a cap to the NCAA, which released sanctions against Michigan State football yesterday, largely for the Mel Tucker era. And in one of those great perverted justice moments that tend to come with the NCAA, they vacated a bunch of wins for Michigan State. Among them was the game in which Connor Stalions dressed up as a Central Michigan assistant and was really a Michigan operative on the sideline. So how's that for a double loss for Michigan State? You get penalized and you have to vacate the game in which your arch rival was trying to steal signs to use against you. Beautiful.
Mel Tucker era or error?
Yeah, well, certainly that. If it weren't for Kenneth Walker III, it would have been a complete disaster. One season of glimmer of hope, and that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, let's get on to the games, guys. We talk about a lot of issues and stuff like this, but this is where it really gets fun. As we've got down to the stretch run, and there are some really tantalizing games this weekend. Specifically in the SEC, it's a rite of passage Saturday for two second-year members who came over from the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma, and they both go on the road to play the establishment. Texas is at Georgia. Oklahoma is at Alabama. Playoff hopes on the line. Who's going to play in the SEC championship game could be on the line. Alabama and Georgia have won the last 5 SEC titles and 10 of the last 11. Basically, everything in the league for a decade plus has gone through Bryant-Denny or between the hedges. And now here come the Horns and the Sooners, and they're trying to change that. With wins, the new guys are going to really improve their positioning for the playoff. Lose, and they're out. We'll pick the games later, but for now, let's talk about what's at stake. From a credibility standpoint, who needs a win more, Gino, Texas or Oklahoma? If they'd stayed in the Big 12, they might both be solidly in the playoff right now. They didn't. Who needs to still prove that this was the right move to themselves and everyone else?
There's a lot to unpack there. Those are interesting questions. From a football credibility standpoint, neither one of them has to explain themselves. Texas is 5th with all-time wins in college football. Oklahoma 6th. So they're okay there. But for right here, right now, I think Texas needs to win a little more. Fair or unfair, the expectations on Texas entering this season were national championship game. And Texas embraced those expectations. OU, there were people wondering if Brent Venables would survive the season. So from that standpoint, an expectation standpoint, Texas. I think also there's always less margin of error in Austin than there is in Norman, a tiny bit. I don't know, from a standpoint of, who needs to win the game more as it relates to what could have happened in the Big 12. I'm not sure we'll ever know. If you go back from 2010 to 2023, Texas only won one conference championship. Oklahoma won 7 outright and shared another. So Texas wasn't guaranteed anything by staying in the Big 12, at least at that time. If you want to talk about access, you probably have more access to the CFP by being a member of the SEC than you do in the Big 12. Right now, we're talking about Big 12 getting one, maybe two. Meanwhile, the SEC, five, and then in some worlds, six, if that's possible. So there are no guarantees there either. Is there buyer's remorse? I don't think so, Pat. I think at the time it made sense. Long term, it made sense financially. And when you compare it to the Big Ten expansion, it makes more sense geographically. So I think if they had to make the same decision, they would have come over to the SEC. But it's a really intriguing question that you put out.
Yeah, I don't think there's any buyer's remorse, but by any stretch of the imagination, especially if you look at some of those donation figures at both schools these last 2-3 years. I think there's definitely no regrets on that front from the administration standpoint, at least. Maybe from the head coaching standpoint, knowing what they got to go up against every single week. But I think this weekend is actually more important for Oklahoma. Because you look at what happened last year, that win over Alabama was not only the signature win, but that was kind of the high point of a down year for the Sooners in their first year in the conference. Texas making it to Atlanta, that was smooth sailing for them. They made it back to the playoff. They were carrying the banner, into the semifinals for the SEC. So I think for Oklahoma to truly be back to where their fans and their fan base thinks that program can get to, even in the SEC right now, I think to go into Tuscaloosa to beat Alabama back-to-back years, I think that would be more meaningful for Oklahoma, on top of the fact that, yes, in terms of the close of the season, you look at them maybe finishing 10-2 if they can get over this hump against Alabama. I think it means a lot more for Oklahoma this weekend than it does for Texas.
Yeah, I can't wait for the games. They're going to be really fun, and they're good. And I would say, answering it on a couple of different levels. The here and now, yeah, probably Oklahoma, because literally they're the first team out of the playoff right now if you do the bracket. And so they're still trying to get in, and nothing would do more to get you in than winning at Alabama. The aspect of proving this was the right move, I would say that also rests with Oklahoma. And the one thing I would say, Brian, is yeah, no, the administration loves this, being in this league. How about the fans? Because the fans should not be rooting for money. And, hey, we got big donation checks. We're making more revenue. Who cares if your team isn't winning? And Oklahoma got their teeth kicked in last year. Obviously better this year, but still not to the point where, as Gene pointed out, they were dominating the Big 12. And now you're nowhere near dominating the SEC. They're in contention this year. Last year said 6-6. And, I think that in realignment, every move has been revenue based. And I think it is hard to get fans to cheer for revenue. It should be. It's been one of the greatest tricks the devil has ever played is administrators convincing fans, we're making more money. Okay. Is Oklahoma still playing Oklahoma State in football? No. Are you going 9-8-1 in the league? No, certainly not doing that. So I think for Oklahoma, there's still a little bit more proving. As you guys mentioned, Texas made the SEC championship game last year, made the playoff. They're fine. I think Oklahoma's the one that is still trying to convince everyone that was the right move. We'll see. But again, great games. Intriguing quarterback situations here, guys. We obviously have basically the most hyped recruit of all time, Arch Manning, in a season that started off very poorly and perhaps now arguably is rounding into pretty good, or at least okay. You also have perhaps the most expensive quarterback transfer signee of 2025, John Mateer. So from a credibility standpoint at quarterback, who needs a great performance more on Saturday, Arch or Mateer? Brian, what do you think?
Well, I think if you're talking about the larger narrative, it's undoubtedly Arch. And you go back, last year, the most watched regular season game, what was it? Texas, Georgia. What was the second most watched game? It was Texas, Georgia. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this matchup in Athens. I think, especially given the playoff implications for both teams, just the brand names. There's going to be a lot of people, maybe even some YouTube TV customers if they get that taken care of. But I think for the narrative.
Please.
Yes, please. For the narrative, though, it's definitely Arch. But if you're talking about on the field and actually, playing between the lines, I think Texas can survive an okay game from Arch and still end up winning. That's not the case at Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma's 1-2 when John Mateer completes less than 60% of his passes. 5-0 when he's over 60%. 1-2 when he doesn't. So it's how well he plays. It really dictates that Oklahoma offense. And I know they think they found something with Xavier Robinson at running back, and they've gotten the ground game going a little bit more these last couple of weeks. Mateer looks a little bit healthier, certainly than when he was turning the ball over there in Red River. So I think for on the field, it's Mateer. But I think if you're talking about larger narrative and just trying to live up to that hype just a little bit from the offseason, I think it's undoubtedly Arch, given the number of eyeballs that will be on this game.
What do you think, Pat?
Oh, I think it's Arch. I mean, people wanted to say he was going to be, after this season, would win the Heisman, be the number one draft pick. I don't think we ever said that, but people out there were saying that. I think all three of us believe that he was going to have a great season, and he hasn't had a great season. He's not been a complete disaster. I mean, they haven't had to bench him. They're right now in the playoff picture with him as the starting quarterback. But it hasn't been the year that people expected from him. Right now, Mateer actually is sixth in passing yards per game in the SEC. Arch is seventh. And if you go by efficiency, which I like more, Arch is ninth in the SEC, 146 rating, which is it's a little bit above average. It's not savior level. It's not a disaster. Mateer is actually considerably lower, but he's also more of a runner. But, I think given the whole arc of the season, everybody, and it's always a great reminder how long football seasons are, that you can completely give up on somebody early and then at the end, like, hey, this guy's pretty good, or the other way around. And Arch has a chance to, I think, fully reclaim a lot of the credibility that he was afforded before he'd actually become the full-time starter there, if he plays well between the hedges against a Georgia defense that is not vintage, but still, you want to take on Kirby Smart in a big game, you better bring it. So I would say there's more riding on Arch's shoulders than Mateer. What do you think, Gene?
Well, if the question is who needs to have the great performance Saturday to help their team win, and if both of you guys just said that Oklahoma needed this game more than Texas as far as credibility is concerned, I would argue that Mateer, I really would argue that both of them need to have great games for their teams to have a chance to win. But if I had to choose one, I would choose Mateer based on something you just said, Pat, his ability to run.
Yeah.
And Bama historically has had difficulty stopping dual threat quarterbacks. And he's a dual threat quarterback. And he's going to have to run for OU to win that game. So based on the fact that he's going to have to do more than I think Arch Manning's going to have to do, then I would say that more weight is on Mateer's shoulders to win this particular game than Arch.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a fair point, that in terms of which team needs their quarterback more, you guys both said it's probably Mateer. Again, Arch has not had at any point in time carry Texas really, and Mateer has had to do that quite a bit for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So we'll pick the games later, as I said. But Bryan will.
Do you want that?
What's that?
I said, do you want us to?
Yeah. Yes, it's part of the assignment here. Sorry. Well, don't worry. You're not alone in feeling like embarrassed by your picks this week, Gene. For the love of God, I'm terrible at this point. But Anyway, Brian's going to be in Bryant-Denny. I'm going to be in Sanford Stadium, which is actually my favorite stadium anyway. So can't wait for those games. Switching gears a little bit, guys. If we are revising earlier appraisals of Arch, how about the other big preseason storyline? Chapel Bill Belichick. And coming into the year, he was the biggest curiosity out there. I thought even more than Manning, because we just simply had not seen a coach of his stature with no college experience go into the college game. And it was a complete debacle to begin with. I was there for the opener, and it set quite a tone when they just got trucked by TCU. And things just got off to a horrific start. He was 2-5, and through the first 5 games there, I mean, it was an ugly 2-5. They got housed by TCU. They got housed by Central Florida. They got housed by Clemson. Their wins were against Charlotte and Richmond. And that's when everybody started talking about, oh, he's going to leave. He's going to leave now. They're going to fire him now, this, that, and everything else. No. They stayed the course. Almost won at Cal. Fumbled a ball going into the end zone. Almost won against Virginia, which is ranked. Fumbled a ball going into the end zone. Then came back and beat Syracuse by 17, beat Stanford. And they're sitting there at 4-5 with Tobacco Road left in front of them. They're at Wake this week. They got Duke, and they're at NC State. So if they come through Tobacco Road in good order, Chapel Bill is going bowling. What are we to make of this season, guys?
Well, I would love to see Chapel Bill, in the sombrero for the Sun Bowl or some of the. I just love the concept and thinking about that kind of those photos of him going through that whole bowl process. So I am kind of rooting for them to make a bowl. But what's the old Bobby Bowden saying? First you lose big, and then you lose close, and then you win close. That seems to be where we're at kind of in the season. And truthfully, you go back to kind of his NFL teams. It was kind of right around the holidays, if you will, kind of right around Thanksgiving when they would kind of start to pick up steam for those Patriots teams of old, where they would figure things out and the coaching staff would understand what they can do, what they can't do. They'd make those adjustments, and then they kind of go off and make their runs to the playoffs. And my only issue with that, and I do think they've improved as the season has gone on, especially these last couple of weeks. They are a little bit more consistent, which is what you would have expected to see out of Bill Belichick's teams, maybe even earlier than this. But obviously he's new to this college game. But my biggest issue is just the schedule itself. I mean, you have a win over an FCS team. You have a win over the worst team in the American in Charlotte. You have the win over one of the worst teams in the ACC in Stanford. You have a team without a functioning quarterback in Syracuse. So yes, they've gotten some momentum, but who has it really been against? And I think that's kind of this test against these trio of teams that really do want to beat UNC and Bill Belichick. I mean, if you talk about if you had to give Jake Dickert or Manny Diaz or Dave Doran at NC State any win on the schedule, I think they would take this one and they'd want to take it convincingly, given all the hoopla. Like I think there's some real resentment, not only in the ACC over the preseason hype and all this, but they want to know that they have a win over Bill Belichick on their resume by the end of the year. And so I think this is going to be North Carolina is going to get 3 really good shots from teams that want to beat them. So that's something to keep in mind with the stretch run against Tobacco Road, and we'll see. It wouldn't surprise me if they lose all 3. It wouldn't surprise me if they win 2 out of the 3 to make a bowl. We'll see.
What do you think, Pat?
I agree very much with what Brian said, that this is largely a product of the schedule as much as anything else. But I would also say, from the eye test, they are demonstrably better than they were. I mean, they should have beaten Cal, and Cal is not a terrible team. They should have beaten Virginia, and Virginia's a pretty good team. Syracuse is terrible, but they handled business. And then Stanford is terrible, and they handled business there, although they blew the cover. Thank you very much. My lock of the week, Tar Heels. So I would say it's absolutely gotten better, but it hasn't gotten good. So there's very much some proving still to do here, I think, in the final weeks. Their pretty good defensively, which again you would also expect. I mean, they have shut teams down. Cal had 4.1 yards per play, Virginia 3.7, Syracuse 3.0, Stanford 4.3. That's pretty solid defense across the board there. They've stopped the run against some teams. They've stopped the pass against others. Their offense is still largely a mess. So I would not say that they are good, but they might be good enough to get to 6 wins and kind of put a positive spin on this thing going into the offseason. Like, hey, all right, we didn't really deliver the way people expected, but we learned a lot, and we're going to be better next year. If he's not going to the Giants, which is a whole other matter. Now, that could just be garden variety speculation. Quite frankly, I don't know why an NFL team would want Bill at this point. Again, we've seen him now. He's been out a couple years, and if this is what rested, rejuvenated, highly motivated Bill Belichick team looks like coming back, I would say we can do better out there. But I think the remainder of his college or the remainder of his coaching career, his lot in life is at North Carolina, and we're going to see how he can do with it because I'm not sure there's going to be other options.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Giants. I'm going to put a bow on what they've done so far this season. The record of their opponents is 13-26, and one of them is an FCS school in Richmond, which is fine. They're not the only program that plays an FCS school during the course of the season. And I will give Belichick a lot of credit for just staying with the we're on to Cincinnati philosophy, and he did what he was hard to do. He was hard to rebuild, to teach, and try to improve this team. And he has done that. We can talk about the quality of opponents that he's done it against, but the fact is that they have sort of stabilized a little bit, and we'll see if they get bowl eligible. Now, the Giants. If you ask Bill Belichick what is the team closest to his heart in the NFL, he would probably tell you the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
He has a long-standing relationship with John Mara, who's the co-owner and president of the New York Giants. And he was asked about this during the presser, Belichick was, earlier this week. And you did not hear from him saying, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here at Carolina. It was, well, we're focused on Wake Forest, which is coach speak for, please call me, Giants. Here's my number.
Yeah.
Call me now. But I think if the Giants reach into the college ranks, I'm not ruling out Belichick, but I think it's a long shot. I think the two coaches that they would look at, one, Lane Kiffin, which isn't a surprise considering he coached Jackson Dart, and Kiffin does have NFL head coaching experience, even though it was disastrous with the Raiders, but maybe they'd give him another go.
Yeah.
And then another name is Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame.
Yep.
And if you go back and look at almost 100 years that the Giants have been playing football, they've never had a black head coach. And that's not a fact that's been ignored by people. And second, Tim McDonnell is the nephew of John Mara. He's also the Giants' director of player personnel, and he spent 8 years on the staff at Notre Dame under Charlie Weiss and Brian Kelly. So if you don't think connections matter, especially a connection to Notre Dame, that they don't matter, then you're not paying attention. So if Marcus Freeman were interested in that, if Lane Kiffin were interested in that position, I think there's a possibility it could be filled by one of those two guys.
No, go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, I think the New York Post would be interested in all three of those candidates, given the potential back pages that they would have if Lane Kiffin or Marcus Freeman, or certainly if Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson were the head coach of the New York Giants. Like that to me was, as soon as you said that, I was like, okay, the New York Post, the back pages would be gold. And then that I know the football would be secondary to that, but that was the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, this is why we pay Gene the big dollars to come up with these things. And certainly not for his picks, but I think these are good points.
Okay.
I don't think there's any doubt that Bill would like to go.
Yeah.
You know, I think that he went to North Carolina because he couldn't get a job in the NFL and wanted to like, all right, I need to go prove I still got it so that I can get back to the NFL. But I still, despite the connections there and the affection and the allure of the Belichick name, if I were the Giants, I would look at this product that he's put on the field and say, nah, I don't think so. Now, Freeman,
I'm with you. I'm not saying that I think Belichick would like to do it. I'm not sure the Giants want to do it. I'm just saying that there is a connection between Belichick and John Mara.
Right. No, and I mean, Freeman to me is a fascinating candidate. I think the NFL absolutely has interest in him. If I were Notre Dame, that's the only thing that would worry me, is that eventually and perhaps immediately you're going to lose him to the NFL. And, you know, how these things work, the coaches always want to invoke family when they make these decisions. If you noticed, yesterday was signing day. Marcus Freeman's son, wrestler, signed with Cornell. Be kind of in the neighborhood. At least you're theoretically there. If you want to move the rest of the family, of his very large family, to New York. But the Kiffin part also is intriguing. Still, one of the greatest things I've ever seen in the NFL was Kiffin attempting a 76-yard field goal just because he could. He is a more mature coach, I think, now than when he was rather absurdly given the Raiders job at age like 14. But all interesting options there. We'll see if Chapel Bill can continue the renaissance in Carolina. All right, guys, let's talk about the playoff rankings. Week 2, we had those. Bryan, how was the live stream Tuesday night? I was at a basketball game.
It was good, you know, flying solo, but and then next week obviously we'll be back, so be sure to tune in as those rankings get released on all of our social channels and Sports Illustrated social channels, and we'll actually put it on the pod this week, so as well, or next week. So yeah, you'll have plenty of playoff thoughts in the moment come next week.
Yeah, yes, be sure to check it out Tuesday night. Bryan and I will be on a live stream fulminating about whatever the craziness the committee's coming up with lately. I think, you know, we had less outrage this time around, largely because the ACC flopped so badly last week that they took some of the controversy out of things. But there has been an ongoing debate that's picked up again a little steam about the future size of the playoff, 12, 16, or something larger. Mark Keenum's the president at Mississippi State, very influential CEO in college athletics, and he came out on Paul Feinbaum last week, said that he was in favor of 16. He had some other format things. He thinks there should all be automatic bids. I would love to see 12 remain for not just obviously this year, but 2026 as well. Let's at least just sit still for a few years and watch things develop. But I'm interested in you guys' standpoints. Gino, what do you think? What is your preferred playoff size?
Did he say he was for automatic bids or was for
no automatic bids? Sorry,
right, exactly. Okay, that's the way I understood it too.
Yeah. Sorry, whatever I said was probably wrong.
No. I misheard you, I'm sure. I don't see what's a big rush. 12 seems to work fine. I mean, that's the number I would stay with. I certainly don't advocate the Tony Petitti let's expand to 71 teams format. Let's let this sit for a few years and see how it plays out. It's like we've got to buy a new car every year. I do think that if they move to another number, it's going to be 16. That's the sense you get from Greg Sankey. It's certainly the sense that you got from the Mississippi State rep on the on Paul's show. The other issue to me is, name me 16 teams that are legitimate national championship teams.
Amen there.
I'm having a hard time coming up with 12. If Duke somehow squeezes into the CFP, do we really think Duke's going to win the national championship? As much respect as I have for, say, USF, do I think they're going to win the national championship? No, it's really still only a handful or so of teams that can make a legitimate case for it. sure, football miracle could happen, but I'm having a hard time finding 12. I think it would be even harder to find 16.
Well, yeah, and I have an article up on SI.com that kind of lays into a lot of the playoff talk right now, and frankly, the rush right now is coming from the Big Ten and wanting to expand the playoff and well beyond 16. I mean, I think some of the recent talk is even centered around 24 teams, which is the FCS playoffs is the same size, but I just think you're right. I mean, I have a hard time thinking of. All right. Yes, James Madison would be included in the field and maybe get a shot as that second group of 5 team. But like when you're talking about going on the road to the 1 or 2 seed, like that's probably going to be as you expect, especially if it's an SEC team, late at night, that's just not an environment that you think that those teams can not only survive, but pull off the kind of miracle upset that we get in the NCAA tournament. So I think the conversations are essentially going to punt certainly the decision to next year. We're coming up on the deadline on December 1st. That's the kind of key date where they have to inform ESPN if there's going to be any changes. And there's no agreement between the Big Ten and the SEC right now. So we are going to be stuck at 12 for another year. It definitely seems like all indications are pointed that way. I think if you had to poll all the other FBS conferences, they would say, let's go to 16. Let's have the 5 automatic bids as well. And then we'll have the 11 at larges. You basically kind of take out those first round buys and add a couple more teams to the mix. But, in an ideal world, going back to your question, Pat, I mean, I almost think 8 would kind of make more sense if we're truly crowning a national champion and we kind of wanted to get the actual best teams. I think 8 would be that right mix between kind of the geographic diversity, getting the conference champions all in there, as well as the actual teams on the field. You're right. Whoever comes out of the ACC, probably going to be a one and done in this tournament based on the results on the field right now. Do you want to kind of add more to that? And I don't think so. I think we should actually kind of compact things a little bit, but I don't think there's any going back from 12 at this point. And the only leap from now, much like the NCAA tournament, it's going to be a slow creep year by year by year. And especially if the Big Ten starts to convince others that they need to go even bigger, well, then the tournament expands even further.
Yeah, that's why when I get out, I just don't want to see a tournament bigger than 16. I don't want to see 16. It would not be the worst thing that ever happened.
Right.
But I don't think it's good. I think you're going to see a lot of very bad games in the first round, which we saw actually with 12 last year. Right. They were not very competitive opening round games. The best thing about it was, yes, there was more inclusion, which was great. And we had campus games, which was really fun. I was down for that, but the football itself was not terribly competitive. And the more teams you add, the less competitive the games against the top of the bracket will be against the bottom of the bracket. I would be fine with 8, but we ain't going back. You're right, Brian. There's no way the playoff gets smaller. Nothing ever gets smaller in college sports. It only gets bigger. But if it gets bigger than 16, I think that would be a complete travesty. I know that's what Tony Petitti wants. I can't find a lot of other people who would be in agreement with it, which is why actually one of the reasons he wants to go to 24 is that so that he can basically bribe other conferences to go in. Like, hey, we'll get you more automatic bids too.
Yeah. That's the other part of the equation that really stinks. The automatic qualifiers. Play your way in. There's no free passes. Play your way in.
No. And I think this season's a good indication of why Tony Petitti wants 4 automatic bids for the Big Ten, because they usually don't have 4 worthy teams to get in without the handout. They've got 3, and it's a scramble for a 4th. So, well, as Brian said, December 1st is the deadline on that, so we'll keep an eye the last few weeks of November where that formalizes. But speaking of the playoffs, there's always a lot of debate, obviously, about what you should choose to decide the rankings. Is it, analytics, resume, eye test? Let's throw some eye test out there. And if you guys can give me your 3 teams that you would not want to face. If your team is in the playoff and you're like, oh my gosh, these are the teams I do not want to see my team have to go up against. Who would they be? Brian, why don't you give us your three first?
Well, number one's obvious in Ohio State, just the amount of talent. They are a defending national champion. So, there's that kind of extra little bit of motivation going into the tournament, especially given how hot they get. I think the coaching staff too, and Ryan Day, he understands that playoff format. So I definitely would not be wanting to try to game plan to how to stop Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Julian Sayin now, and all the weapons that they have offensively on top of Matt Patricia's defense, which I think can change from round to round, given his NFL background. I think that would be really hard to kind of game plan in a tournament like this. So pure talent, all that, I think Ohio State's the easy number one choice. I'll kind of go off the radar for 2 and 3, though. I think Texas Tech with that pass rush and the way they can get after you, that front seven. You talk about what you can take away. I think in a hostile environment too, if you have to go to Lubbock in some of those early round games, or even if they make it to the Cotton Bowl, potentially for that quarterfinal. I think that would be a really tough sell, if you're a team just facing off against the waves of pass rushers that they can throw at you. I think that would make a difficult task. This is obviously a tournament. We kind of saw it last year in terms of, are you good in the trenches? All right, then you can make some plays and you can make some changes. And I would put Notre Dame in there as well. That rushing attack that they have, I think CJ Carr has come along, and just the way they won games last year and making it to the national title. Marcus Freeman has it figured out. He pushes the right buttons, especially this time of year, and I think he's a guy that gets it. I wouldn't want to face him on the other sideline, and I think that would kind of be my three in terms of Ohio State, Texas Tech, and Notre Dame.
Gino.
Terrifyingly, I agree with Brian on Ohio State's a no-brainer, obviously, for all the reasons that Brian mentioned. And Texas Tech, that D-line, those linebackers, their ability for big plays. They do have issues in the red zone, but they can score, and they can score fast. My third team would be Georgia. For a couple reasons. But number one reason is they refuse to die. They are the team that this is, way before probably a lot of our listeners and viewers' time. There's a Monty Python movie where, like, in the knight gets his arms cut off, his hands cut, his legs cut off, and he just sits there and goes, just a flesh wound, and then somehow regroups, and that's Georgia. They regroup, they figure out a way to win. Kirby Smart is masterful in these situations, and I think in big games, which of course means he'll lose this Saturday after I say all of this. And I do think that team is good enough, and I think they're a balanced team, and I think their defense is starting to come around. So I would not want to see Georgia across from me on the bracket line.
Monty Python, way to go there. That's old guy radio, but I think everybody can kind of relate to that, even people that are less than 100. So that's good. I'm going to say Ohio State for all of the reasons you guys delineated. They're the best team right now, and a complete team. I'm going to say Notre Dame because I think that is a dangerous opponent that knows how to win in the playoff and has gotten better as the season has gone along. Third, call me crazy, I'm going to give some respect to Indiana. All right? The Hoosiers are 21-2 the last 2 years. They know how to win.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
And I do think I want a team with a quarterback, and Fernando Mendoza is a hell of a quarterback. And he didn't have a great game against Penn State at all until he had to, and then he was lights out. Obviously, the catch by Omar Cooper was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. But, man, Mendoza, that drive to get sacked on first down, no timeouts, 100,000 people going bonkers, get up, regroup, dime, and take them down the field. That was really impressive. So give me the Hoosiers. Never daunted. Speaking of Fernando Mendoza, we're a month away from the Heisman Trophy being awarded. It's still like there's a lot that can suss out. I wrote this week that we should have more candidates, not fewer at this time of year. Put 10 in a column. As of today, I'm going to ask you guys what your ballot would be and in what order. For me, I'm putting Mendoza first. It's not written in stone. It's not written in ink even. It's not written at this point. But that's who I would go with if I had to fill out a ballot today, Thursday, November 13th. I would put Julian Sayin second. All right? He may not be the best player on his own offense. That's the problem there because Jeremiah Smith is the greatest talent, but man, has Sayin been good. I mean, incredibly good. Better than I expected him to be. And third, I'm going to go Diego Pavia. I'm tempted by Jeremiah Love. I'm tempted by Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker at Texas Tech. But what Pavia has done to lift a program and has put up just monster numbers the last couple of weeks, I just don't think there's any denying his value to Vanderbilt and to college football. Fellas, I will cede the floor to you all on this.
Go ahead, Bryan.
Well, I'm gonna go off the radar too. I think it's a weird Heisman year because I don't feel like there's any coalescing around like some momentum in terms of one candidate or the other. Like it feels like and almost we've kind of said this the last couple of years, but it really rings true this year in terms of this is the most wide open Heisman race, and we only got a couple weeks of the regular season, a couple weeks, so we end up having to turn in our ballots. And it's like I have no clue who I'm going to end up putting on there. Like, I mean, the three names that I give you could be well off the radar in terms of the three names actually turn in, and that's not an indication of all right. These last three games just matter overly more than some of the others. It's just that's kind of the nature of this race, and I think if I had to put guys in order, I'd put David Bailey atop my ballot, leads the nation in sacks. He has been transformative, I think, in terms of that Texas Tech pass rush and really what that team has been about this season. I think his move, in the portal was not only one of the biggest moves, but it really energizes that program. He gives that defense juice. I think Jacob Rodriguez is another guy that's right there and might end up splitting the vote there for Texas Tech if they end up running the table, winning the Big 12 for the first time ever, and or making it to the Big 12 championship game for the first time ever. But to see what he's done consistently down to down and getting after the quarterback, he's been outstanding. I put Diego Pavia there at number 2. You're right, Pat. I mean, for all the reasons you articulated, I mean, he has carried that program. Even that Auburn game, I mean, he was responsible for like 70+% of the yardage there and all the, all but one of the scores. So he has really carried Vanderbilt not only to national relevance, but on the brink of the playoff. Which is crazy to think, just that program itself and where they sit in the SEC. And certainly they have some big games to close things out to where he could have a marquee moment, not only putting up numbers against Kentucky, but possibly into the season. That could be a play-in game for the playoff, if you will, at Tennessee. So Diego Pavia would be number 2. And then I am throwing Jeremiah Love in. I think he's almost gotten overlooked, in terms of this run that Notre Dame has been on. And you go back to earlier in the year, I mean, one of the reasons why they lost that Miami game, they were not turning the ball around and handing it off to Jeremiah Love. He was not a non-factor in some of their losses. When he's breaking those long runs, he is outstanding. And I think he certainly deserves to be in that contention to at least make it to New York.
Well, I will preface my 3 by saying, and I'm guessing you guys share the same sentiment. All these picks are like angel hair pasta thin differences between one player to the next, to who's ever 4th or 5th on our list or 6th. I'm a humongous fan of Pavia. I did not put him on the list because I felt like if I put Pavia on there, Haynes King at Georgia Tech is very much the same kind of player, has the same kind of importance, and has done sort of the same kind of things that Pavia has done. Maybe he's not as flamboyant. He isn't as a personality, but I think they're similar players. Doesn't mean they're not deserving of being on someone's ballot. I have no problem with Pavia being on a ballot. I would just argue Haynes King would be very close to however you think of Pavia.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. That's good.
Yeah, my number 1 is Sayin, and for a lot of the reasons that Pat mentioned, but I think he's just been too good to ignore. And you can talk about their wide receivers, but guess what? I can talk about IU's wide receivers, and that's always part of it. So he would be number 1 on my ballot. Number 2, a player that neither one of you mentioned. Let me just refresh your memories. There's a guy at Alabama, plays quarterback, Ty Simpson, who's having an unbelievable season and in many ways has carried that team. without a running game, at least without a consistent running game at Bama. So he would be number 2 on my list. I did think about Mendoza, and if I could have 4 picks, he would be on there. But I'm going with Jeremiah Love as the number 3 pick. Not to be contrarian, not as to refute anything about Mendoza, but just I can't ignore what Love has done at a position that I don't think gets the respect that it deserves anymore. So
I agree there.
Notre Dame is built around the run, and it's built around Jeremiah Love. And so I'm going to, for right now, and as Bryan said, this is so fluid that next week we could have an entirely different list. But right now, Jeremiah Love would be number 3 on my list.
Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame. Gene loves the underdog programs. Loves the
I think
gritty.
you have to in this case.
Up from the bottom.
Just,
right.
Pulling up the bootstraps and just, trying to make something of themselves.
Never get any breaks there.
No,
no
they
attention.
Don't. They don't.
Speaking of lampooning, Gene, though, it's that time. Winners and steak dinners, our weekly pick'em contests. Things are not going great at the moment, but maybe worse for one of us more than the others. Overall standings, Bryan leading at 29-27, went 3-2 last week. Gene and I have slumped below 500. Gene is 27-30. I am 26-30. The Fat Bear is the only thing keeping him out of a tie for the basement, and he did go 0-5 last week. How do you explain yourself? I was 2-3.
Okay. Well, a few things. Unlike you, Pat, I'm not going to whine about a quarterback who took a knee as he was running for a touchdown that would have been the cover.
It's because you didn't have any of those.
The previous week you did. You mentioned something.
I know.
Okay.
But you weren't even close enough, were you?
I understand. But the point is, I'm not going to make excuses.
Okay.
All right. Second, and I'm going to channel my inner LSU here. All right. Just like LSU is channeling it with Brian Kelly at the moment. Pat, you were not formally authorized to accept my picks last week. Secondly, I have decided to terminate those picks based on cause. All right. So I'm firing those picks. So it's as if they never happened. And instead, I'm just going to invoke 5 Fat Bear picks.
Clever. Very clever.
So there you go.
That's good.
Look, I'm
going to be Jeff Landry and say, no, we fired your ass.
I stunk. I deserve all the mocking. I mocked you guys for your picks the previous week. So this is called karma. I'll accept it and move on.
There you go. All right. We need a rally to catch up to Bryan.
We do.
And we're going to start with a game I actually want to discuss just a little bit beyond making the pick. And that's Notre Dame giving 12.5 at Pittsburgh. And is there a chance Pitt is going to really tank this game? Producer Kent, can you please play the sound of Pat Narduzzi talking about this game?
Do you feel like this is a must-win for this team when it comes to something?
Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game. I'm glad you brought that up. It's not an ACC game. I gladly get beat 103 or 110 to 10 in that game. They can put 100 up on us as long as we win the next 2 after that. But again, our focus is on Notre Dame and getting as many wins as we can.
Pat Narduzzi, cool with getting beat 103 or 110 to 10. Oddly specific scores he came up with there. But I wonder
why.
Yeah,
the 103 to 10 is the combined score of their last 2 losses to Notre Dame.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, there you go. All right. Yeah. Explained. But not explained. Is this a wise strategy? Is it a real strategy? Is he like, I really don't care what happens in this game because I can look at the landscape and say, if we don't win the ACC, we're not going to the playoff? Their last 2 games, big games after Notre Dame, at Georgia Tech and Miami. So if they win both and they get to 7-1 in ACC play, they would quite likely be in the ACC championship game and then playing for the automatic bid. Or is he underselling his team and thinking, hey, we win these all 3 games, we might be able to get in that large bid at 10-2. What's you guys' thoughts on this, Gene? What is Narduzzi just talking, or is he actually going to tank against the Irish?
Well, we've all seen Narduzzi. He runs hot. He runs passionate. The idea of him just conceding a game is ridiculous. Do I believe a word that he just said there? No. I think he walked in his locker room or the meeting room later and said, all right, I have lowered the expectations. I've tried to take the pressure off you guys. Now let's go out there and kick Notre Dame's butt. I don't believe for a second he wants to get beat 103-10 to Notre Dame.
Bryan?
So who's the pick, Gino? Are you taking the?
You want me to go ahead and do the pick too?
Yeah, go ahead, do the pick.
Okay, well, I've come up with a number of reasons why Pitt can cover this game. They get Notre Dame at home. Game day is there. They're retiring Aaron Donald's jersey. Both teams are in heaters. Notre Dame's won 7 in a row. Pitt's won 5 in a row. It's strength against strength. Notre Dame is 26 in rushing offense. Pitt's defense is number 3 in rushing yards per game. They're coming off a game where they held Stanford, take it for what it's worth, to minus 10 rushing yards. Pitt is coming off of a bye week. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons to pick Pitt, and yet I just can't. So I'm going to take Notre Dame. I'm going to give the points. I like to think it's going to be a close game for a half, and then I just think Notre Dame pulls away.
Another Geno zigzag.
Yeah,
there you go.
We'll see about that one. You know, I understand what you're saying, especially early on, and I think being healthy and especially some of those linebackers, they've been beat up time and they've been kind of been shuffled out of the lineup. But you know, Pitt I think has actually proven to be a little bit deeper, you know, as a team than we first expected coming into the season. And I think Pat Narduzzi, knowing the score of those previous Notre Dame games that he's played against as the Pitt head coach, I think he understands how important this game is. They're saying this might be the biggest game, the biggest Pitt game at Acrisure Stadium in the history that they've been playing there, just given all the things that are going into. You mentioned game day, having a playoff hopes, maybe on the line with this one. I think Pitt ends up covering the number. I don't know if they win, but I think the way that they have been playing since Mason Heinschel has been inserted in the starting lineup. Yes, he's a freshman. Yes, he's bound to make a few mistakes. He throws the ball with some reckless abandon at times, and maybe that gets them in trouble against this Irish defense that loves to force takeaways. But there's something about Pitt this year, and I think that you kind of see that sly smile from Pat Narduzzi when he knows he has a good hand, and I think he thinks he has a good hand going into this game. So I'll roll with him.
The number is it's intriguing to me. It feels like a pretty big number for all the reasons you guys laid out, not the least of which is Pitt having the open date to get healthier and to prepare more, especially because Notre Dame couldn't really peek ahead last week. They had to prepare for Navy option. It's not like you can just half step past that. But I'm taking Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is playing extremely well right now, and I'm going to take Notre Dame to cover that and give some problems to the freshman quarterback, as good as he's been. So, all right, let's get to the SEC games. Again, I will be between the hedges for Texas, Georgia. The number Texas is getting 6.5, which is you're going to hear this number repeated here for the next few games. But to me, I'm going with the dogs here. Texas hasn't been a very good road team, and Georgia is, for the many reasons Gene enumerated, they are tough to kill. They find ways to win. Gunnar Stockton is playing quite well for Georgia quarterback. The Texas road games, lost Ohio State, fine, but their offense was dreadful. Loss at Florida, bad loss. Barely beat Kentucky, barely beat Mississippi State. They got to play a lot better than that in Athens, and I don't think that Georgia's going to allow it, so I'm taking Georgia in the points.
Kirby Smart beat Texas twice last year, and neither one of those games was in Athens. So getting them in Athens is a huge deal. All the other reasons you just mentioned, Pat, are totally valid. I think Gunnar Stockton gives them a dimension that could cause Texas some issues. I think Georgia's running game has gotten better, and I'm unsure if Texas can run the ball consistently. So the combination of all those things, I'm with Georgia, and I'm laying the points.
Make it a clean sweep there, and I will go with Georgia as well. I'm reluctant a little bit just because of, you certainly saw it in the SEC championship game last year. The chess match between Sark and Kirby and Glenn Schumann. I think there is something there. I think they have some kind of, the answers to the answers to the answers in this one, are going to be intriguing. And I think the quarterback run game with Arch and two, that's a key thing. You could see, you go back to the Ole Miss game that I was at there between the hedges as well. Trinidad Chambliss was able to scramble enough, buy extra time for his wide receivers. I think Arch can kind of do the same thing. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this ends up being a close game into the fourth quarter, but Georgia ultimately, because they are hard to kill, ends up covering the number with some late scores. That just seems like their MO this year. They've fallen behind every game in the SEC except for that Kentucky game. And so they get behind, but then they kind of slowly chip away at you, and then they just kind of end up surviving in the end. So I think they will end up covering the number at home, but this could be a close game for most of those four quarters.
I know more than a few Georgia fans who grumble that Kirby never covers, but I think he's gonna cover this time. The other game, Brian, will be Bryant-Denny. Afternoon kick, Oklahoma getting 6.5 against the Crimson Tide. Brian, your thoughts?
First offense to 24 points might end up winning this one. You figure with, especially if Oklahoma coming off the bye, that pass rush, R. Mason Thomas, if he's able to go in this game, they can keep this thing close. I think John Mateer will be able to make some plays, but ultimately Alabama at home, giving that black hoodie of death on Kalen DeBoer and covering that 6.5.
I'll take OU in the 6.5. I think OU's defensive line will be the difference maker. And I think OU has started to find a running game, and Bama doesn't have one, and OU has a D line, and I think OU, even if it loses, is going to stay within the number.
Yeah, I think this is going to be pretty muddy from a defensive standpoint, probably fairly dominant. A lot of punts. Who doesn't turn the ball over? In which case I like Kalen DeBoer's team. They're good with the ball, and I'm going to take Bama. It's a 7-point game, and the number's 6.5. This is 23-16 or something to that extent. Roll Tide. Big Ten game. Iowa still trying to hang around the playoff race. Took a tough loss to Oregon at home in just classic Iowa weather in a classic Kurt Ferentz game, 18-16. They go out to sunny SoCal and play a USC team that is playing quite well. Iowa, like Texas and Oklahoma, getting 6.5 in the Coliseum. Gino, where are you going?
So you want to be a playoff team, USC. So this is your chance because you get Iowa at home, and then you're at Oregon, then you end up against UCLA. Iowa gave Oregon everything it wanted and then more. But the game was at Iowa City. It was in the cold, and it was in the rain. And now they're going to, as you said, sunny Southern California. But guess what? Have you looked at the forecast?
No.
Rain.
What?
Heavy rain.
Oh.
So does that change things? I'm still going to take USC and lay those points. I just think at the very end, they're going to somehow nudge ahead by 7, but I think it's going to be literally a muddy, sloppy game. But I have enough faith in USC that they're going to be able to, at the slimmest of margins, cover that 6.5.
Yeah, USC on the road versus at home, pretty wide split in terms of not only covering the number and going against the spread, but I'm still going to go Iowa in this one. You know, just the way you look at the way they played Northwestern last weekend, the USC linebackers, they're especially in the first half, man, the run fits were awful. Like they were not playing well at the linebacking core. That front seven was getting pushed around a little bit, and if that was Northwestern, I think that rushing attack, especially accounting for the quarterback run in this one, I think I was able to kind of keep this close because it is rainy. They muddle up. USC likes to run the ball. I think they'll actually try to keep this a pretty low scoring affair. This might be one of your classic Big Ten West games almost, out west. Give me Iowa to cover the number in a close one, even though I think USC might win by a field goal.
I'm going to go with Iowa as well for a lot of those reasons. I watched the USC Northwestern game, and the story of the history of Northwestern's program was told in one play, basically. They intercept Jaden Maiava, running it in for a touchdown, and then credit to Maiava, great hustle play, comes over, forces the fumble, but the defensive lineman, doesn't know what the heck to do with the football, reaching it out for the pylon. No, dude, just get tackled at the one, and then they'll score the next play. He fumbles into the end zone. Northwestern completely botches the recovery for a touchdown. It's a touchback, and then the next play, USC goes 55 yards. There you go. I like what USC has done in terms of getting better this year, but I don't love the team. I think Iowa at least keeps it close. I'm even happier to hear it might be a mud bath in the Coliseum. Give me Iowa and the points. All right, lock of the week. Who has one?
Well, I got
Bryan.
one. And I want to, and inform the listeners and the watchers out there on YouTube. Number one, please rate and review and subscribe and tell your friends, because we are coming for our compatriots at the MMQB in terms of the number of downloads. We're coming after them hard. And so tell your friends. But the reason that I bring this up is because our little group text, on a Saturday always gets lit up when discussing North Carolina. It seems like Pat in particular, every time he makes a pick for the Carolina, or he's talking about the Tar Heels not covering the number, like our texts get lit up in terms of the others receiving votes text group. And so for that reason, I am going with Wake Forest, because I will be the one complaining about North Carolina this week. I'm going Wake Forest. They're given 6 points. The last time the Deacs won in Chapel Hill, do either of you know? 2006. They have won twice at Keenan in the last quarter century. That's times crazy. In my lifetime, they've won in Chapel Hill. Number 6 this weekend, they cover the 6. Give me Wake Forest.
I like the pick. I love Jake Dickert. I think he's done a phenomenal job at Wake. And yes, I have dog-cussed Carolina blowing the cover against Stanford was one of the most appalling things I've ever seen. But anyway, go ahead, Gene.
Well, first, I'm looking at the background. Is that like some sort of theater stage you're on with the Gothic shadows to your right there? I am wearing Carolina blue. I just noticed that. I'm not taking Carolina in my lock of the week.
No,
I'm terrified to even make a lock of the week pick given my my records in this. But I was trying to figure out a way to take Florida and get those 15.5 points against Ole Miss. And I was thinking, well, they beat Texas. They could have beaten Georgia. Florida has won 3 in a row versus Ole Miss, including last year when they were a 13-point underdog, and they eliminated Ole Miss from the CFP consideration. I just can't unforget that loss to Kentucky last week.
Horrible.
And I can't unforget the Lagway interceptions and him getting benched. And it just looked like a team that, and I don't use this term very often, but they just had phoned it in. They just gave up. And I get this game's at Ole Miss, and I'm thinking, if they get down again, do they just say, we're done? And so I'm going to go with the we're done factor. Ole Miss is incredible at home. The numbers that they put up at home, their record at home. So I'll take Ole Miss and the University of Lane and give the points.
Yeah, the DJ Lagway factor there, and they are bringing him back at starting quarterback. Yeah. It does not inspire confidence. All right, I'm going to go to the Big 12 which is risky because you never know what the hell's going to happen in the Big 12 from week to week. But give me Utah laying 7.5 at Baylor. I hate the hook, but I don't care. I'm taking the Utes. I think they're playing well. Baylor, inconsistent to say the least. Defensively, iffy. So I'm taking the Utes it's a 7.5 spread. They're going to win by 10. Give 31-21 Utah.
Write that down, Brian. 10.
Yeah, 10.
Okay.
Absolutely. You'll hear from me. If it ends up being like 6, I'll be on the group text, dog cussing somebody. So,
okay.
All right. Speaking of cussing and fussing, we got to close with this. Florida, man, at it again. You can always count on them. Port St. Lucie. This is Channel 7 News. A heated debate outside a Port St. Lucie pub. It's always a pub. Turning dangerous. And police said the altercation was all about chicken and eggs. According to the police, early Tuesday morning, I don't know which Tuesday, Harper's Pub, there was a argument. This is the quote from the police sergeant. These guys, they love talking to the media, I think, so they can say, can you believe the stuff that we have to deal with in our job? Quote, there was a conversation about how many, I kid you not, how many eggs a chicken can lay. And that conversation got a little heated. Bullets flew as the two men shared different convictions. 3 people were arrested. Guns were collected. My question, how many eggs can a chicken lay, right? Do we have an answer? Do we know? I'm sure we might have some poultry scientists that listen to us. Please let us know. But I want your opinions. Gene, can you give me a best guess? Like, how many eggs can a chicken lay and how often? Like, do they have to reload every month, or is it like 2 months? How long does it take for a chicken to produce an egg, and how many?
Well, in my many years of chicken raising, first of all, if I had a nickel for every time I've heard this chicken egg incident situation across the country, I don't know. Can we call like somebody's agriculture school and have them tell us? But if we're each gonna do a guess, like, are we saying during the course of a day, a week, a month? What's your number?
Let's say a week.
Okay, so a week. I'm going to guess that a chicken can lay a dozen eggs. That seems like the right number. A dozen eggs during the course of a week.
Brian?
Because it comes in those boxes, right?
Yeah. I'll go with that. Yeah. You know, and by the way, you know what? Free idea for some TV executive that's listening along out there. Just do a show at some Florida bar. Like, you know, just have some cameras rolling, get the parking lot, get the inside, you know, like the content for days, you know, like it feels like this Port St. Lucie bar or whatever you're talking about, Pat, seems like it would be perfect for some show on Tubi. That's just like Florida people coming in and out of the bar, just talking about random things like this. So free idea for the TV executive out there. I will also go with a dozen eggs a week, although maybe that seems a little bit high. Maybe we'll go a dozen every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think you guys are operating a sweatshop, a chicken sweatshop, if you want a dozen eggs a week.
Brian just said 24.
No, every other week.
According to the internet says 4 to 6 eggs a week. So
they got to get going.
You need 2 or 3 weeks to get your
there you go. I was spot on. A dozen every 2 weeks. There you go.
You changed your mind though. You started with 1. You started with a dozen a week, and then you went to a dozen every 2 weeks. So, no, you know, look, we have here in a humane nation, we do not want to overtax our chickens. All right, let them work at their pace and produce 4 to 6 a week. Every 2 or 3 weeks, you got a carton. Then they get like a week off or a spa day or something, you know, give the chicken a little bit of time to recoup and then get back after it.
That's smart.
Recoup.
Good.
I want that. Yeah. So I don't know what the these esteemed geniuses carrying guns while drunk were actually arguing particularly, but there's the answer for them. Could have kept them out of jail if they just checked with others receiving votes. We would have that for them. All right, that's enough of this show. We have maxed out, or bottomed out, one of the two. But we'll be back next week. Please do listen, subscribe, rate if you want to say nice things, and we will talk to you later. Enjoy the football Saturday.